MMA Rants and Raves. Robert Whittaker versus Yoel Romero 2. Post-fight review. Guys, let's talk about this fight. You know something? I got a rant here, guys. It seems like the commentator was biased. I mean, it was annoying me. He was talking about throughout the fight what a freak Yoel Romero is. And then later on, after the fight, he said that one of the rounds should be a 10-7. I mean, was he watching this fight? I mean, you get kind of persuaded that one guy is winning because he has the most dominant kind of impact on some of his strikes when he dropped Whittaker. But you also have to look at what's really important here is the volume. I mean, 3 out of those 5 rounds, it was Whittaker landing more of the strikes, and some of them quite significant. And what about the talk of the damage that Whittaker did? Especially in that first round. If the cut man couldn't work on that eye, which was really swelling shut, the fight could have ended. So that was a close call right there. That was damage. I mean, look at these two guys at the end of this fight. Who looked worse? I mean, it wasn't just the eye that Romero had. He looked like he was exhausted. He had his arms resting over the top of the cage. He was tired. I mean, this was a guy that was just worn out. Both guys, they looked like they'd been through a war. It was very tough. He talks about 10-7. What about the first round with this new scoring system? Romero was practically a punching bag. I mean, he hardly did anything in that round. It was Whittaker throwing most of the strikes, all those front kicks he was throwing. I mean, he was picking Romero apart. So isn't that a 10-8, right? Where's the mention of that? He clearly won this fight. He took 3 out of 5, and that's basically it. Now, you want to give Romero a 10-8 in the 5th round? I mean, you can do that, but there's something important here. You see, the round is 5 minutes, and if Whittaker is landing a lot more strikes, and then towards the end of the round, Romero has a lot of significant strikes where he drops Whittaker and he has the more significant strikes, is that more substantial than all the volume that Whittaker was throwing? What overrides what? Volume versus power? I mean, what's more important? You tell me. Keep in mind, I mean, let me give you an analogy, like baseball, right? If a guy gets a base hit, and it's a very nice-looking, crisp strike of the baseball, it goes right into center field, fun to watch, it's a solid base hit, and the hitter clearly gets to first base easily, rounds first base, threatens to go to second, and then comes back to first. And then you have another guy who gets a base hit, but it's a bunt. All right? And the guy runs real fast, and he barely outruns the throw to first base. They both have the same impact, right? It doesn't make a difference. They both get a base hit. There's no difference. One guy gets a home run, and he hits it clearly out of the park. He hits it so hard all the way in the upper deck, or he hits it out of the field entirely. And then one guy has this high fly ball, and it barely clears the wall. They both have the same impact. It doesn't make a difference. And it should be the same in MMA. You have a volume fighter versus a power fighter. Now, let me tell you, Whittaker is also a power fighter. He's got power. It's just that Romero has a granite chin. I mean, he's super tough. He's only been knocked out one time, and it took a ton to get him out of there. And that was a light heavyweight. So he's very tough. We can see that, especially when Whittaker hit that kick to the head. Just hear the impact of it. That's how hard this guy kicks. We know, because he's put fighters away with that before. And you can see it didn't have much of an impact on Romero. But did it have much of an impact? There's something important to look at. When you're taking on a fighter who's had problems with his cardio in the past, very muscled up guy, when you're hitting a guy like that, and you're making him work, both those things, making him hit you and you hitting him, are very taxing on his cardio. It might not show the immediate effect that Romero was having on Whittaker when he dropped Whittaker. But keep in mind, those strikes over time were wearing him out. He was exhausted at the end of that fight. And that doesn't include the damage to the eye that Whittaker did, because Whittaker's face looked better than his. That's something very important to look at. Volume also is important. And that's the problem with these stat sheets that they have with MMA. They're flawed. Because if you look at box scores, like I just mentioned, they're not going to show how cool the base hit looked, or how high and far the ball was hitting the home run. They just show what they did, because it doesn't matter. And it's similar in MMA, because volume could be just as damaging as power, because volume could wear a fighter out. And that's the whole point here. This fight was about volume versus power. And at the end, volume won. All right, if you look at round by round, and that's the way this is scored, 3 out of those 5 rounds, Whittaker landed more of the strikes. I mean, that's something you have to look at here. The other thing he said is, why doesn't he go for more takedowns? He mentioned his Olympian status. Well, why doesn't he mention the Olympian caliber of Robert Whittaker's takedown defense? All right, this guy's takedown defense is legendary. Remember Romero's first fight with him? I mean, he was shrugging off his takedowns like he didn't even matter. Jacare tried to take him down. Guys try to take this guy down. If you can get him down, he pops right back up. He has incredible power in his hips, really good technique in defending takedowns. Why not talk about that? Give the guy credit. Maybe that's why he wasn't trying to take down, sir. Because he was shrugging them off. And keep in mind, you're a big muscled up guy, you have to conserve your energy. Romero had a good strategy. If he tries to take this guy down and he's shrugging them off, his cardio level is going to continue to drop. And that's why he was fighting the way he was. If you notice, the first round, he hardly did anything. Because he knows he's in for a 5-round fight. He needs to conserve his energy. So he was trying to fight strong at the end of rounds rather than just come in there guns a-blazing. And if you can't get the fighter out of there, he's looking at a situation where his cardio is spent and he has many rounds ahead of him. So he had a good strategy by not going for those takedowns. And if you remember in the interview they had at the end of the fight, the commentator asked Whittaker if his opponent did enough to win with the knockdowns. I mean, why wasn't he asking him if he thought that he was confident that he won? Because of his takedown defense, because of the strong first round, the damage that he caused to his opponent with the eye, and more importantly, why doesn't he thank Whittaker for taking this fight? This is one of the most important things that he didn't mention. He didn't make weight. The guy didn't make freaking weight. I mean, so say, look, you know, you're a gamer, you took this fight, you fought a guy that would look like he was around 200 pounds by the time this fight came around. The guy is already huge, and now he's a guy who doesn't make weight, which makes the fight not fair. I mean, you can't fight at 185, you don't fight at 185, it's that simple. And then when he interviewed Romero, you know, even Romero had to bring up the weight cut. The commentator didn't. He should have reprimanded him for that and said, look, you didn't make weight. What happened? Do you have any explanation for that? Do you give Whittaker credit for taking this fight, a fight that he did not have to take? I don't think a fighter has to take a fight if the other guy doesn't make weight, because then it's not a fair fight. Listen, there's 3 reasons why a fighter doesn't make weight. 1, it's discipline. 2, he's not feeling well. Or 3, it's a strategy. What's the strategy? You come in as big as possible against your opponent. And let me tell you something, this guy is a huge guy. Maybe you should fight at 205. And then he's complaining about it, about the commission, I made the weight. No, you didn't. You didn't make the weight. You didn't make weight. And the other guy didn't have to take this fight. You didn't make weight, and you still lost. All right? That's the bottom line. The commentator doesn't bring this up. Oh, do you think you did enough to win? And let me tell you something. Very quietly, this guy is a legend. And he's only 27 years old. I mean, he gets another couple of wins, he's going to go down as the greatest middleweight of all time. Now, you're going to bring up Anderson Silva. Well, Anderson Silva is a legendary fighter. He's a great fighter. But keep in mind, he has an asterisk in his career. He was caught. He was caught with substances, and that puts into question all his other achievements. That's the way it works when a guy gets caught. And the other thing is, he fought in an era of Rich Franklin, Chris Lieben, and Chael Sonnen. And of course, quality fighters. Whittaker is fighting in an era of Yoel Romero, Luke Rockhold, Chris Weidman, Jacare. I mean, all these guys that came in from Strikeforce, Tim Kennedy. I mean, the middleweight division was never this stacked. All right? And then you had guys dropping down. Gegard Mousasi was fighting there for a while. Machida, Vitor. I mean, this division has never been stacked like this. And this guy is on top. He is a bona fide superstar middleweight championship legend. That's who Robert Whittaker is, and he has to get more credit for who he is. And like I said, 27, he wins a couple more fights, that's it. He's the greatest middleweight of all time. He's got everything. His takedown defense is ridiculous. I've never seen takedown defense as good as he has in the middleweight division. And maybe one of the best in the UFC, maybe one of the best in UFC history. His striking is excellent. His footwork, his cardio, I mean, he just is an incredible fighter. I can tell you that. And he has to get a lot more credit, especially in this fight. Where's the commentating talking about all the things that he's already done? All the things that I mentioned. Where's the talk about that? I mean, he talked about one of the rounds being a 10-7. Is this guy kidding me? I mean, what fight was he watching? Keep in mind, it's not just what one guy does if he gets a knockdown in one point in the round. What about the rest of the round? If you have one guy landing most of the strikes, volume, you know, that's doing damage, taxing the other guy's cardio, and then the other guy gets a power shot and a knockdown, that qualifies him to get a 10-8 round? Of course not. You want a 10-8 round, you got to dominate at least most of the round, and that's not what he did. He had that spurt, you know, where he was dominant. I would say the 5th round, yeah, you could say 10-8, but it wasn't for the entire round. You know, Whittaker did respond with kicks. He did retaliate. He did counter. I mean, come on, 10-7? What are you talking about? Well, what fight was this guy watching? It just looked like a bias to me, that's all. And this is the benefit of watching a fight live. You don't hear the commentating. You get a clear, unbiased view of what actually is happening. And what happened was, Robert Whittaker won this fight. And I want to point that out because Whittaker was the man to win this fight, and Whittaker is the better fighter. He beat this guy twice. He didn't make weight, and he still beat him. He didn't have to take this fight, but he's a gamer. He took it, he beat him, and he won, and he beat him twice. And now it's time for another opponent. No rubber matches. This guy wants to fight again. He's got to make weight, and maybe then they can put another fight together. I would like to know what you guys thought about the fight. Please leave your comments. Please subscribe. Please like up this video, and thank you for tuning in.